Alright, you guys ready to get going? Oh yeah, just trying to get you some good things here. So, let's see here. Are there any questions on last week's class? Yeah. That's below. Generally, yeah. It could also be hyperpolarized if it's at the top of the action potential too. All it means is that it just means more polarized from center. Center means not polarized. We had our example of somebody's on the polar end of an extreme, right? They're very far away from like centric. And so it can be on polar ends in either direction, right? So hyper polarized, right? More polarized, right? Which means it could be more polarized in either direction. Depolarized means what? No, just definitionally. Depolarized. What does the word mean? Less. Yeah, less polarization. So it just means if I think I left my marker at home. I might have an extra. Let's see here. Maybe not. Well, I don't have an extra with me today, but it just means if your line is at 0, hit me. Thanks. This is 0. This would be hyperpolarized. Anything moving more towards it would be depolarized. Is that your question? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's. I find it easy to think through the stuff I can't figure out by just slowly kind of walking through what does this stuff mean. It'll give you clues. Occasionally, there's some words that are named in really sort of ass backwards, useless ways, but they're kind of the exception of the rule. Most of the names give us some clues about what they mean. Thanks. God bless you. Were there any other questions? I feel like there's not enough questions in this class. Do you guys feel comfortable asking questions? Okay, you're not too intimidated to speak up, are you? Okay. Because it's not the type of thing that the class is designed to practice. It's designed with the expectation that people feel comfortable asking questions, and that if for some reason you don't feel like it, you got to get over that. Okay? Because if you don't ask questions, I'm assuming that you know things. I'm assuming that we can move on forward from there. So feel free to interact, all that kind of good jazz. Because I want to make sure that you guys get this stuff down good. Because it is tricky. That's a lot of stuff. It's really fast. And there's not a lot we can do about a 9-week quarter. Just, we got to cover the content. Yeah? Question? Oh, you're just waving. Okay, I must have missed a hands. So, okay. Well, that works out. You guys ready to cover some more of neural signaling? Okay, we didn't get through all of it that I'd hoped for last class. So I want to cover a little bit more, and then we'll move forward into vision systems. Sound good? Okay. Yes.
Neurotransmitters, they don't actually go through the membrane, they just are on the ions.
Yep.
And then when the ions go through, that would be the whole 3 and 2 switch.
No, a little bit different there. You're right up until that end part.
Yeah, that's what I was like.
Yeah, okay, so the 3 and the 2 switch, what's that? Anybody know what that's referring to? Okay, exactly. So is the sodium-potassium pump exchanging those ions in response to a neurotransmitter unlocking a receptor? You're shaking your head no, Steven. Why not? It's used to kind of counteract that concentration gradient. It's not used for it, right? Yeah, because the concentration gradient, we have that at that resting level, it allows leakage of our sodium and potassium, right? So if we have that leakage, one second, then what do we need to do to counteract that leakage? If we want to maintain the resting membrane potential. If it leaks, it's just going to come back down back to here. And what do we have if we have equality of these voltages? Yeah, essentially. I mean, maybe not instantaneously, but pretty darn too fast thereafter. So what do we do to counteract that leakage, to keep our resting membrane potential kind of where it ought to be down here? Yeah, okay, so you got the sodium-potassium pump. Its job is to maintain that resting membrane potential. It's a very energetically expensive job, right? And for those of you guys who might have forgotten, this is Drake teaching us about the sodium-potassium pump. Okay, and it's very apt because we have our phospholipid bilayer that even has 2 letters. All right, we've got the extracellular space and the intracellular space including the cytosol. ATP is a very energetic component to it. Right, that's our biochemical energy that he needs to use to kick those ions back and forth. So he's exchanging, right, 3 sodiums in red for 2 potassiums. Okay. So that's actually what he's doing in hotline bling. It's all about the sodium potassium. So we know that that's the job of the sodium potassium pump. So that's what we're referring to when you were saying those the 3 and the 2 exchange.
Yeah.
Right? We're talking about Drake here. We're referring to that. Right? That sodium potassium pump exchange. But that's not what's driving those ions in the instance of when a neurotransmitter binds to a receptor, right? So if we have this is your channel and your phospholipid bilayer. All right, 2 layers. Here's your channel. There's a gate. Okay, you got this gate blocking the channel, and you might have a ligand binding site here, where you might have a neurotransmitter. What's your favorite neurotransmitter? Abbreviated as 5-HT. Okay, so this is 5-HT. Okay, it binds to here, so that might open up, unblock that gate, so that you have ions. Right, so this is neurotransmitters. These are ions. And then the ions can flow through to the inside. Okay, so what's your favorite ion that's going to flow in as a function of serotonin here? Let's say sodium, that's a good bet. Okay, so now you've got these positive charges that have come in, which means when we measure that, right, this is 0 down here. What's a good guess of the resting membrane potential we were using? Okay, that's good enough. Okay, so where is this going to change? Depolarize, and it's going to go up, right, Chelsea? Sorry, and you had a question earlier. Right?
Yeah. But it's going on with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
okay. Right? What do we call that little bump? Graded potential. Yeah. That's one way we can call it. What is another thing we could call it as? It hasn't quite reached threshold. We knew that. Why? Yeah, it hasn't. Mandatory postsynaptic potential, EPSP. Right? It's kind of this. It's just another way of referring to a certain type of graded potential. So, the ions are going to come in based on what force is driving these sodium ions in. Yeah, both actually, right? So sometimes those forces might be in opposition to each other on certain ions. But in this case, you've got negative intracellular charge and a positive extracellular charge. So you have electrostatic pressure, EP, bringing these inside. You also have a concentration gradient that's also driving as a force, because there's a lot of sodium on the outside and not a lot of sodium on the inside. So you have both forces driving this positive influx in. Mm-hmm. And then you also have the separate, but in this case, complementary force of concentration gradients. So that's what's bringing them in, not the sodium-potassium pump exchange. Sodium-potassium pump exchange, we can model that. People usually put it as like another sort of function here. Okay, if this is going to be your sodium-potassium pump, right? This is constantly sort of cycling through by virtue of ATP binding to it, right? constantly cycling those through normally, just to maintain this level there. These are being driven in by those separate forces, not by that force. Does that make sense? Yes. Yeah, the sodium potassium pump isn't going to be so much involved in resetting after the action potential. And as a point of clarity too, the action potential is not. I know what you were meaning. The action potential is not initiated by potassium, or nor is potassium really a player at all in initiating the action potential. What's potassium a player in? And bring it back down. Exactly. Good job. So we talked about this. So somehow we have to cross from here. We got to get a little bit higher to this threshold to elicit this rising phase of the action potential, right? How do we do that? We do need to have another EPSP. How do we do that? So this is what we were just talking about, is that having the 3 and the 2 pump exchange is not, no, it's not at all a part of this action potential. It's not yet. It's not at all. It's involved in keeping this resting membrane potential low. It's not involved in bumping up to exceeding threshold. So you had a really good point that what is involved is we need to have some more EPSPs. This isn't quite enough, is it? How do we go from here to here? Summation of EPSPs. Yeah, well, what kind of summation? Yeah, exactly. It could be either temporal or spatial. Now, what do we mean by each of those, respectively? Over time, indefinitely? So you said the key word was short enough, right? So the key part about temporal summation is that they need to be happening in succession, but quick enough, right? Not, yes.
A lot within a high frequency at the same time.
Yeah. As opposed to spatial summation, it was referring to what then?
In different places on the neuron. Different areas.
What's happening in different areas? What kind of activations?
Well, you're getting IPSPs if you bring it down, but that create that additively create.
Yeah, and so for spatial summation, they'd have to be occurring close enough in space, right, to be able to summate. So remember how we distilled what you had communicated about the temporal summation into the important point that they have to summate close enough in time. So spatial summation doesn't just mean that they're happening in different places. They have to be happening in close enough places to be able to summate. Follow?
Is that also
Basically, yeah, it's going to have a more influential effect if it's spatially closer, yeah. And so let's say that happens, and we get spatial and temporal summation of EPSPs, and we come over here. It's just enough here. So now we have our actual action potential. What's happening from here to here in the channel kinetics. Anybody know? What's flooding in? They're flowing in, yes, but by virtue of what's occurring in the kinetics of the actual channels. By kinetics, I mean what's happening mechanistically in the actual sodium channels. Yeah, very simply, right? So they can't enter unless we talk about what's happening. So you're right in that this is being driven by the entrance of a lot of sodium. But they don't enter by magic, right? It'd be cool if they did. But what you were referring to, I think, dials into it a little bit tighter, which is there's all this entrance of sodium in the rising phase of the action potential because you have voltage gated sodium channels are now open. It's really important to know it's voltage gated sodium channels, right? So what it tells you, if you've never heard that word before, which you ought to have, but if it seems like you might have forgotten it, and it seems like a foreign word, just walk it backwards. Voltage gated sodium channel. So it's a sodium channel that's gated by voltage. It's a sodium channel that's gated, which means it opens or closes based on sensitivity for a certain electrostatic charge on a certain voltage. Make sense? Okay, so we're going to then, we have voltage-gated sodium channels. So voltage-gated sodium channels, they're opening. And so you see this positive influx of sodium. When we measure that, because it's bringing a ton of positive charge on our graph, it brings a lot of positive measurements. So we've now repolarized